All right. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the Remarkable Edge live show series where bold execution meets brilliant breakthroughs. You are entering the space where elite professionals and high performing organizations elevate their leadership, amplify their authority, and dominate their industries. I'm your host, Dr. Vernita Glenn-White. I go by Dr. V, the Brilliant Solutionist, and I work with thought leaders, industry titans, and corporate executives and trailblazing entrepreneurs to bridge the gap between expertise and influence, turning high level vision into high impact execution. I don't just develop leaders, I position them as the definitive authority in their industries. And unlike traditional leadership programs and all those things and theoretical strategies, I deliver real world results driven solutions that establish you as the authority in your field, optimize decision making, and create lasting market dominance. Why? Because authority isn't given, it is claimed. So if your organization is ready to build high performing leaders who dominate their industries, let's make it happen together. Thank you so much for joining me. And I want to know a question. If you are, well, I have a statement for you, but just let me know if this resonates with you. If you are tired of playing it safe, doing what's expected, and watching opportunities slip by while others take the lead, then this episode is for you. So today we're talking about the hard truth of safe choices, right? How many of you have made safe choices or you are currently thinking about a safe choice? And it's often the riskiest type of choice you can make in today's landscape. No matter what industry you're in, the safe choice is still the riskiest choice that you can make. And so, in fact, the very thing that you think that's protecting you, whether that's your career, your business, or a leadership status, or any other area in your life, it is actually costing you millions. And it may not be millions only in dollar cents, but it could be millions in your level of impact, millions in your influence, and then of course millions in your revenue, depending on how you're operating and how you are showing up. But if you are the type of leader that wants to have that has a big vision and wants to ripple effect, then even though it's not millions right now, your the ripple effect is going to impact millions, whether you do something or you don't. So that's why we're talking about the risk of having a safe choice today. So I'm going to show you why, and most importantly, what to do about it, because we don't just talk about it over here. We take action and we do things about it. But let's dive into some current events. So earlier this week, I read something that came across, something in my in my emails, and I'm looking at all things, but something that stood out to me was something from Inside Higher Education. And it was about, as of right now, as you're watching this, President Trump's proposal to cut federal funding and its impacts on leaders, especially in research, academia, and in the healthcare industry. And I saw this article from I think it was Inside Higher Education. Now, if you don't know, I'm a former college professor. So I worked at the Ivory Tower, and I have 5 degrees, so that means I spent a lot of time in the university landscape. And whatever your thoughts are about college, I understand the purpose for college, and I understand why some people think college is a scam. But I'm not talking about either one of those. I'm just talking about specifically as it relates to what is happening with federal funding. Particularly for this article, it was with in NIH, the National Institute of Health, and they get a lot of funding. Now, I didn't apply during my time, I didn't apply for a lot of NIH grants. My area was NSF, so National Science Foundation, and I worked on a lot of teams and with a lot of researchers with NSF. And during my stint as a college professor, I was going after a $3.5 million NSF grant. It was a lot of things that were happening behind the scenes as to why that didn't happen, but I'm giving you that backstory because I do understand what is happening. And so here's my stance. Whether you agree or disagree with the slashing of the federal funding, it is important that leaders it is important for you to understand your role as a leadership if you are a part of, this whole funding thing. And what I realized was happening is that a lot of people in those roles, and if it's you, I'm not calling anyone out specifically. I'm just talking from my experiences and what I have experienced over the years being connected to universities. A lot of researchers think that if I just do good work, if I get the results, then I'm secure, I'm safe, nothing is going to happen to me because I'm doing important work. But guess what? If your head is just buried into just what you're doing on your research, and yes, you're doing good work, but if you're not building up your influence and authority, then when it's time for people to make decisions about the federal funding, to be the voice to speak out as to, yes, this work is important, not just because you as a researcher, because I understand as researchers, I know that side, we get so close to what we're doing that outside people may say like, well, why is this relevant? And this is only relevant in the ivory tower or in the medical lab, and you haven't made that jump to the practical significance. So if you're not talking in common terms, then it's easy for an outsider to be like, oh, this doesn't look like it's important, and slash it. And so it is important that you can't play it safe anymore if you're in these industries of just doing your work. So, like I said, too many people in academia and in business and in the medical field have relied on institutional funding and thinking, again, as long as I do good work, I am safe. But that puts you at risk, and we've seen this, that now people are being reactive instead of having things in place to be proactive. Now, the good news is, like, we see things are happening. It's a little reactive, but then you can kind of see on now what do I need to do moving forward to be proactive. And guess what? The I think one of the solutions is to be one of those voices at the table. Now it may be too late, like right now, but I think there are ways for a lot of you who are, at who are doing these research, who are getting, the people in the funding places know your name. Like I used to work with a team, and when I was going after my grant, they literally was like, hey, call such and such. So a lot of the people who are making these decisions, you have relationships with them, but then like I talked about in my Fluent Leader Intensive, how are you leveraging those relationships just to get your funding or to be a voice? And I think that's where people are playing it safe. So you have an opportunity of not just being the top person that gets all the funding, but now you're the one of the people who are making the decisions, having that power and having that level of influence. And then that way you can start planning on how to become an independent ecosystem and have your own independent economy. Now, that doesn't mean like, you have to strike out on your own. It's just a way of thinking like, okay, this is happening. Are there other funding resources so that I just don't rely on the federal government? And there are, but it's just about how you start to position yourself and showing up as an affluent leader and not just the expert or the go-to person. You want to be the person that the decision makers call into the room. And as we're seeing was playing out, there are people who are making decisions that have no idea what it takes, to operate these grants. They're looking at it from, just budget perspective or a financial perspective, which is important, but then they're not looking at the ramifications, like if you slash certain projects. Now, I'm going to say this because I've seen some things need to go, right? Like y'all are just wasting money. Y'all are not doing what y'all need to do. But on the large scale, on a much more grander scale, there are people out there doing important work, but you're not in the forefront as the spokesperson, as the one with the power and the influence, and you're not operating as an affluent leader. All right. So I want you to know like that's relevant as to why leadership disruption is important. And that's a prime example of literally playing it safe is costing you millions, especially if you are someone who relies on federal funding, and it literally costs you millions if you just only been playing it safe. So this is why it is important for you to step it up so you can start creating those policies, shape the industries that you're in, and then fund the right solution. So like I said, whatever is happening, whether things are cut or not cut, the ones that are not getting cut, I guarantee that they have the people that are out there already creating the policies, shaping the industries, and they are part of funding the solutions. Now, you can agree or disagree, but if you're not stepping up in that role, then you just have to take it, how it is. I'm not saying that is right, but now this is your opportunity to realize like it's not enough for me just to be a oh y'all can't it's not enough just for me to be a good researcher, right? So now that we've set the stage and we're going to take a deeper dive into the idea of playing it safe and why it is the biggest hidden risk in your leadership and what to do instead. So let's break the dangerous myth of the stability of playing it safe will keep you protected. Here's a caveat to this. Like I do understand, like I do understand like not being reckless, right? But on the other side of that, as we've seen over the last few years, whether you are in business for yourself, if you are running a corporation, or if you are a high level career professional, nothing is safe, right? So this is really about your personal leadership at your core, to where like, and you have your big vision. What's more important to me? Right? So playing it safe really isn't keeping you safe. So you might as well go do what you need to do and get have another way of being protected without just relying on one source. Now, I'm not telling you to go out there and be reckless, right? Those of you with the big vision who are want to be, who want to be trailblazers and, industry disruptors and things like that, it does require a different level of personal leadership. It does require a different level of faith of moving forward and belief in yourself and belief in the bigger vision that you have and the belief that you're called to be the person to do this, right? And so now I got that out of the way because I don't want people to be like, yeah, I'm just going to go, burn the place down. No, that's not what I'm talking about. So there are ways to be disruptive. So I hear this all the time from different executives, entrepreneurs, and high level professionals that I don't want to make too many risks, right? And I do understand that. But if you have a different calling, or if you are, someone who wants to make change, then risk has to happen, right? And then you could say that I'm just going to stay the course and do what's expected. There are a lot of people who are like, I'm just going to be a good little leader in my position, be a good little worker. And for those of you that that's what you're called to do, then continue to doing that. But I'm talking about the people who know good and well that you want to make significant changes happen in your field, in your business, in, any other area of your life. Then you can't just stay the course and do what's expected, because those are the people who get penalized and punished, as we see, especially with layoffs and different things like that. And then, or you may say that I don't need to shake things up. I don't want to be the one to shake things up because things are fine just the way they are. And that is not a good way of just thinking, because things are changing so rapidly in the industry. So if you think things are fine, and then there's an acronym for fine. I can't remember right now, but just go look it up. That doesn't mean that fine is necessarily the best place to be, because fine could literally mean like all hell is breaking loose, but I just can't see it yet. So I just think it's fine. Like you're sitting there in a room of fire, but because you haven't caught on fire yet, you still think everything is fine and everything around you is going up in flames. So we don't want to think about that. Right. So here's the thing. If you keep thinking those things, you're going to look up next year, 2 years from now, or even 5 years from now, and realize that you've hit a glass ceiling. You realize that your influence is fading. You realize that opportunities are drying up. The people that are panicking right now, especially in academia, or those who are relying on the federal funding. And I'm only talking specifically about the article that I read. There are so many other different, aspects to this, but just thinking about that group, I know that they are like, oh my gosh, I didn't think this day would happen, because when you get a lot of these grants, they are 3, 5, sometimes 10 years out. So you're thinking like, oh yeah, I'm doing good. And then if you're thinking everything's fine and you're not looking for ways to innovate or up level your leadership, or looking at different ways to innovate your industry, they realize that, oh my gosh, the opportunity has dried up, the funding has dried up, or I can't, move forward anymore. I've bumped up, this wall, and I don't understand why, because you've been going with the flow. You didn't want to disrupt. everything was fine. You didn't want to take risk, and then we see what happened. It's not a good place to be in. I've been on the other side of that. I've always tried to put myself in different places, but then I do understand, like, when you don't take the leap of doing certain things, even if it looks like the bottom will fall out, in my opinion and in my experience, you are better on the other side of taking that risk instead of going down with the ship. Even if you're floating on a raft and you're like, okay, this is a different place that I'm in, but you got off the sinking ship. So think about how that applies to where you currently are, again, in your career. If you are operating your own business, or if you are running, a big company, where are you on the or where are you on the spectrum of being reactive versus proactive? And if you are you willing to jump out in your raft, or you're staying on the ship because you think it's safe, not knowing that there's a slow leak happening and the ship is about to sink? So playing it safe is the most dangerous move that you can make, and there's a difference between, we'll get into it, but a lot of you are playing it safe and you're masking it as, oh, I'm just being cautious, or I'm just being careful. No, you're not. You're playing it safe out of fear, and you're not doing it you're not, like, be real with yourself. Like, you're scared of doing certain things. Now, I'm not talking about the healthy fear, because I'm not saying you make decisions in the absence of fear. Like, you do embrace fear. You're going to always have fear, and fear is a good thing. It's just like another emotion, because it's letting like, hey, I need you to pay attention to this. But are you allowing that warning sign to actually stop you, or are you allowing it to inform you? So here's why it's dangerous, and here's what to actually do about it. You need to understand that the speed of change is faster than your safe plan. So we've seen the rapid pace of businesses, technology, the global economies. We're seeing how fast things are shifting. The strategies that worked 3 to 5 years ago, or in certain industries 1 to 2 years ago, are no longer working. They're already outdated. And that's why, like, some people are thinking about certain aspects of college, where by the time you go learn something in college, those 3, 4, 5, 6 years, by the time you come out, like, yeah, I'm ready, it's like, oh, we've already moved on from that, unless the institution itself is able to keep up with that level of change. I've seen institutions who are able to do that, but a lot of them won't. Now, again, I'm speaking from that perspective because that's the industry I've been in for the longest, but you've seen that in other businesses as well, to where some of them are quickly making the changes. One example is when everything happened in 2020, and there were a lot of commercials, like, showing different ways to use the is it PP, the all the protective things, right? Look how fast those commercials and people were jumping on those things, whereas other people were like, by the time they tried to get into it, the world had opened back up, right? So there are people who are able to do that, and those are the leaders. It's not just some mythical thing that's happening. There are people behind those engines, and they are the leaders who are disrupting, and the leaders who are moving at a faster rate than trying to stay safe. Even though I'm pretty sure when they made their strategic plans, it did not call for doing any, advertising like that. But there was a leader or a group of leaders who were like, oh, this is what's happening in the world. We need to put the plan over here on the pause and jump on this. And are you that type of leader, whether that's for yourself or whether that's on a bigger scale? And then, you have to look at the leaders who are willing to adapt and to disrupt. If you're not that type of leader, then you will be replaced. And everyone is like, oh my gosh, it's AI is taking over. AI is taking over. But do you know that there are still people behind AI? I did a little bit of work working behind the scenes with some AI, and being one of the people, because I wanted to understand, like, how is this machine really moving? There's still a team of people behind it. And so if you're not the front person leader, then you can be the behind the scenes leader who's driving how that works. And I was just fascinated. So yes, AI you may be quote unquote replaced by AI, but it's about where you are replaced, because again, AI still needs human inputs, from based on what I've learned working with this massive company behind the scenes and behind the prompts and behind all the outputs and things like that. And then it's not just AI you need to be concerned with if you're not willing to adapt or disrupt. It's also about the new competitors, or people who are willing to take the risk that you have been avoiding. to take. There are people who are out here who are like hungry and going for it and who don't mind jumping out there and being disruptive while you are like, you know what, I'm just going to take my time. We're going to ease into it. And then you're going to look up and like, oh my gosh, somebody's literally snatched the company or snatched this opportunity right from under me. And I don't believe that people are taking things away from you. But I do believe that if you don't align with the opportunity that's coming to your way, then someone who's going to get into that pathway, they can have that opportunity because ideas and opportunities are going to flow. They have no respect to person. And it's going to be who's willing to ride the wave. So then you have to understand that the market rewards bold decision makers. So the most successful CEOs, founders, investors, high level people that you see out in your industry, those are the ones who did not wait for permission. How many of you are waiting for permission? And what permission looks like is, all right, is someone going to give me this funding opportunity? Is someone going to give me this speaking engagement? Is someone going to, give me this deal? Is someone going to give me this investment versus you going after it and you creating those opportunities and you deciding that this is the change I want to see. This is what I want to experience. So I'm going to go and make it happen. That's how you get the top people. Now, regardless of how you feel about them directly, look at the ethical things that they've done to get where they are, and you too can be that person in your circle of influence right now. You also have to understand that the people who are in these positions, they took calculated risk and then pivoted where others have hesitated. I know I've been in places where I've hesitated, and I know I've been in places where I have not, and I can guarantee that where I have not hesitated, I've gained the most reward. And I'm pretty sure you can look at your past experiences as well. And then when I say calculated risk, again, there's always going to be a risk. But what there's also a risk of staying still as well, right? So you have to weigh it out. When I talked in my affluent leader intensive, at first I said there was a balance between intuition and data, but I don't like the word balance because I don't believe that is always going to be equal. But I do believe that there's a spectrum that you have to flow through between your intuition, your gut feeling, like tune into your star player, and then looking at the data. Like literally is biblical to say count all the costs. So it was in the Bible. The people were building the towers, but they had to count all of the costs before they started. Now, here's the thing that where you become the CEO of YOU. Sometimes the data that you look at, the math is not going to math, but you're going to have this strong sense of urgency, this calling, this pulling. Your intuition is going to be so high that you're going to take that leap of faith because now you're informed by the data and you're like, okay, the math may not be adding up, but I have faith that this is the right thing to do. That's like a calculated risk. So I'm not saying that you just blow caution to the wind and you just jump, full steam ahead and not knowing anything. And I'm also not saying that you only look at the data and don't move because the data is not aligning. You have to look at your individual situation, look at your company, and then you can get some outside perspectives, but it's ultimately you the one that has to make the decision. And that is what it means about taking a calculated risk. So whether you're in business or academia or corporate leadership, authority belongs to those who are willing to disrupt. And you have to ask yourself, am I willing to disrupt what I am currently facing? Again, whether that's in your personal life, whether it's in your career, whether that's in your business or the company that you are running. Now, third thing we're going to talk about is that safe choices kill innovation and limit growth. So the leaders who cling to the comfort zone or who don't want to go past their limit lines or who don't want to step out on their edge, they stop thinking ahead. And I know, I'm being honest, it can be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to keep thinking about this. I just want to stay where I am. I already worked hard to get where I am. Can I just relax? No, you cannot. Well, you can, but just don't be upset again. Like when those opportunities dry up or when you realize that you're bumping up against a wall or a ceiling and you can no longer grow or expand. But I do get it. So I'm not just going to say, yeah, go ahead. Always go for it. It's going to be easiest, the best thing ever. On the other side of it, it will be the best thing. But I do understand that in the midst of it, it is not the best thing because your mind is constantly, going. And that's just the cost of being a high level leader, or as I like to say, an affluent leader is like you you are supposed to be at the level where you're focusing on your highest impact activity so that you can dedicate all your time to constantly thinking forward because your leadership has allowed you to put those systems in place that the things that don't need you are already running smoothly. So that's something like if you're not able to continue to think ahead, then you have to look at like what are you still dealing with that you're not supposed to be dealing with at the level that you are at or the level that you are trying to get to, right? And so you have to always step out and always be on your edge if you want to be that person that's running your big vision. Now, if you don't have a big vision, I invite you to tap into that and you can, if you need some support with that, DM the word disrupt down below or comment or DM me that word disrupt because if you're just going with the flow and if you're finding yourself always reactive instead of being proactive and you're not you know innovating what you're currently doing, that's because you're probably out of alignment with your big vision or you don't have a big vision. So then you understand that missed opportunity you have missed opportunities if you're not willing to think ahead and you're not willing to be innovative. You're missing opportunities because you're too focused on maintaining what you already have. Now again, listen to me carefully. There are you do there is a there is time for you to really want to keep what's going. So I'm not saying that you're always just throwing things out and starting over. That's not what I'm saying. But if you're too focused on just maintaining and not moving forward, then you are going to miss opportunities. There was a time, well, before I get into my personal story, I'm gonna give you an example that you can just think of. Like a lot of people know this between Netflix and Blockbuster, where Blockbuster was like, oh, streaming, what? People are gonna do that? No, people are gonna always come to the store and get these tapes from us or these CDs, these DVDs from us because people just love coming out of their houses and things like that. The Netflix came around, it was like, no, we're gonna do these things where people don't have to leave their houses at all. And Blockbuster was like, shh, who's gonna do that? And now it's like Blockbuster who? There's gonna be a generation of people who never heard of Blockbuster. They're never gonna experience that. Well, I don't know, things be turning around. But for the most part, they're not gonna experience, having to go to the store, going down the aisle, picking up your favorite movie, and then back then we either had to fee if you didn't rewind it, or if you get the DVD, then you check out because you got a certain amount of time, so you try to watch it as many times. There are some people who's never going to experience that because of Netflix has entered the chat. Now, do I believe? Now, I was reading up on this like some time ago. I do believe Blockbuster could have, salvaged and still remained a giant if they would have started saying, oh, that's what they're doing. Come on, team, get it together and move with speed and added that to what they were doing, but they were comfortable with maintaining. And look what happened. I remember my time as when I was working at a particular institution as a college professor, and in the education department. This is why I'm an advocate. If you're working in higher ed, you want to stay there because you love it. Try to be in multiple departments. Don't just stay in one. All right. So the department that I was in, it was education, and they were so like, oh, we're gonna just focus on the elementary education department and all these elementary education majors. And I was like, some things are changing. Everyone doesn't want to be an elementary teacher. I thought everyone shouldn't be a teacher, but whatever. But elementary, I'm like, we're missing an opportunity to have a secondary program. And they were like, well, we tried that before, it didn't work. And I was like, well, what did you try? How did it look? And then when I learned what they did, I was like, there's a way that we can do this without hiring more people, and that's why I created a plan to say, this is how it could work. And they were like, well, no, it's going to be too much. We want to just focus on and, laser in on the elementary majors because, we pride ourselves on being high touch and fully involved in our students. I'm like, it's still a way to do that, but okay. They didn't want to do that. And there was a decline in students becoming elementary majors. And there was one time I had 3 students for an entire year because certain classes were 2 semesters apiece. They had me for 2 semesters and 3 students in the class. And that is ridiculous, right? First of all, the amount of money that they were paying to be elementary teachers was so high compared to what they were going to get paid when they graduated. But can you imagine like how that is. Now, don't get me wrong, like I taught to the highest level, but that is a hard pull to for a whole year teaching three students. There's a reason why, there's a lot there is high energy, well, should be high energy when you are having multiple people in the classroom and the dynamics, but three students, right? And I don't know what it looks like right now, but I saw the decline of the department, when I was there because they were so focused on, maintaining what they have, and that safe choice. I know it killed the growth, and they lacked the innovation that could have been available for them. So I know what I'm talking about. I lived it. And I've seen it. And so I do understand, what can happen. And I'm saying this to say that even if you are the disruptive leader and you are the one that wants to step out, it is okay that people are not going to always buy into that. It is better that you step out, say what you need to say, and be disruptive than the person that sits silently, because you're a star player. You're going to start feeling that. So I was happy that I got it out. I saw what could happen. And then I'm also seeing the downfall. I'm not saying like, oh, yay for them. I'm not saying that, but it's like I did my part. And I want you to, to own that and just understand that everyone may not like your idea, but you did your part in due diligence of speaking out. All right, so action steps as we wrap this up, because I gave you this whole big thing. So let's jump into some action steps. So how do you take bold action without being reckless? Because I do understand that that is a concern. So we're not talking about being reckless. And as I go through these steps, if you want more support or take a deeper dive, remember to comment the word disrupt down below, or you can DM me the word disrupt. So I work with different levels of clients. And then when I was a consultant, we went through a version of this strategic risk framework. And it looks different depending on which industry I work with or what the goal was. But overall, this is the framework and that we use. So the first thing, they were based on three principles. So the first one is calculated confidence. So knowing when to pivot or shift based on data, the trends, and the foresight, and not just your gut feeling. Just like I said earlier, I believe that there is a spectrum between your intuition and then, the data, and you need to learn how to operate and flow through that like an accordion. So you don't just tune out your intuition, you don't just ignore data. But once you look at those things, then you get to have calculated confidence and move with certainty. Now, this doesn't mean that it's always a guaranteed result, like you're always going to hit the mark. That is not what I'm saying. But wholeheartedly as a leader, this was the best move to make based on what I know and based on what the data is saying. And you decide which one is going to weigh more at that time. The second principle is proactive positioning, becoming the voice of authority before you go into crisis and reaction mode. A lot of you can see the ship sinking, the building on fire. You can see where it's headed, but because you are playing it safe, you're not speaking up. And don't get me wrong, I do understand, like, if I say this, if you're working as a career professional, like I could get fired, or if you're working as the top person running a company or even your own business to where you might not get the deal, you might not get the partnership, you might not get the funding. I do understand. So I'm not saying this like I don't know what I'm talking about, like it's not a real thing. But I can tell you, being on the being the person who stood out there as the voice of authority, even when it was like, oh my gosh, I am out here on the limb by myself, I can tell you that it is a better feeling, and it has opened up doors for more opportunities. Even sometimes when I was like, I have no idea what this is going to look like, but I cannot sit still and be a part of the burning ship, the sinking ship, or the burning building, or I would feel some type of way if I jumped out in the raft because I saw it coming, and I didn't give everyone else an opportunity to do that. So you do have to become that voice. A lot of you, like I said, are sitting there quiet, not opening your mouth because you are afraid of, of the what's going to happen on the other side of that. That's something you have to deal with. I believe that's where you step into your personal leadership, and there's some work that you need to do with that, because everything that I've done now, looking back, it still aligns with my big vision. Now, sometimes I do go way out there, and I know, thank God, he's like, come on back. Sometimes, but that's a muscle that you have to develop. Okay. And then the third principle is decisive execution. Oh my gosh, you have to act faster and more strategically than your competitors. And sometimes you are your competitor in your mind. So it's like, okay, I need to work faster, than the thought that's going to slow me down. And then when I say competitors, is just look at your industry. Sometimes, you know, we yes, you could say that I'm just unique. There's no competition. Yes and no. you know there are people, everyone, there are 8 billion people on this planet, right? And one company or one industry or one whatever cannot service them all. So but people have options, right? And you want to be part of the option. So that means you do have some competitors, just what it is, right? So there's so many things that are vying for everyone's attention, but the faster you can make decisions, the faster you can execute, then and go to market, however that looks for you, then you are putting yourself in a much better position as an affluent leader and an affluent authority. So one example, hate him or love him, Elon Musk and Tesla. And yes, I've seen that the Tesla stocks are down in the bucket and people call Elon reckless and all of those things. But guess what? He has failed miserably before and he's like, oh, what are we going to do next? He's always going and creating those opportunities. He's not just hoping that something will change. He's not hoping that an opportunity comes. He strategically moves and he engineers what he wants to see. And he's not like this mythical creature, right? There are some quirks about him, like, God broke the mold on that, right? But uh, all of us have something, especially if you have this big vision for yourself. All of us have this way that we can engineer opportunities and think more strategically, but it's just going to require a lot more effort and tuning in and actually executing, right? And stop being so comfortable and just accepting status quo. So he's not the only one who can do certain things in the world. He's just the one who's willing to take more calculated risk and executes faster than a lot of us. And so I'm like, even I'm learning for myself, like, hey, when you have this thought, jump on it. When you want to make this thing happen, move on. If you want this opportunity, go ahead and create it for yourself. You can do that. I'm pretty sure you've done that before, but you've gotten, a little lax in how you are approaching things, and you can start back doing that. And so this week, I challenge you to identify one area where you have been playing it safe and then take that bold strategic action toward change. And if you want more support with that, DM me or comment the word disrupt down below. So one thing that you're going to do, you be honest with yourself, because you're not going to reach any new levels if you're just going to listen and be like, oh, that was cool. Oh, that's nice to do. No, I want you to stop as soon as this is over to write down that one thing that you're going to do and actually doing it without knowing the outcome, right? Go ahead and just take the action. All right. That's what people do. They just act and then they'll deal with the outcomes later. You have to build that muscle. All right. So if you're here watching live, I may not be able to see the comments, but I can go back. Go back and drop your questions down below and let me know where you have been playing it safe, and I will respond. And let me know what's stopping you from going to your next step. A lot of you know what your next step is. You have a vision of your next step, whether that's personally, whether it's in your career, whether that's in your business, or whether that's you who's driving this massive company. You know what the next step is, but why aren't you taking it? And if you want some support, or if you want to, just talk it out, just get a high level, overview or a different perspective, comment disrupt down below or DM me. I'll be happy to chat with you. All right, so as we wrap up, I just want you to understand that the bottom line is those who win are the ones who disrupt. Look at any industry, those who win are the ones who disrupt. So if you're waiting for the perfect time, then that time is going to pass you by, and you're going to miss the ship. You've missed a lot of ships, but there are some more coming, and you don't have to miss these. And if you are still waiting, then the time to get on certain ships or pathways, it was yesterday. But then guess what? Like I said, there are new ones that are coming around, and you can get on them right now. But you have to make that decision, and you have to decide, I am going to do this, even if is even though I may not know the outcome, I rather operate in a state of being proactive instead of always reacting. All right, so in today's episode, if it resonated with you and you want to go deeper and you're ready to step into a fluent, high level leadership, be sure to subscribe to the show. The information is in the link below, and then you'll get behind the scenes insights and you'll get a complimentary gift when you subscribe. And then another opportunity, like if you're already subscribed and you're like, okay, what else is next? I'm opening up the doors to my Amplify Your Authority group, and that information will be just comment the word lounge and I'll send you the information. But it is a strategic pivot from my affluent leader intensive. So I don't just talk about these things, I do these things. If you are with me, depending on when you're watching this towards the end of February and the early part of this month, March, I did my 5-day affluent leader intensive. It was supposed to be 9 days, but I got some feedback from people who probably couldn't attend. They're still catching up on the replays and they missed some of the co-working sessions and they really want to be involved with that. So I was like, you know what, let me pause on the remaining 4 days and invite people into a complimentary free group that is off, just watching a virtual event, coming into a space where we can take a deeper dive into those first 5 days, have more in-depth strategic co-working sessions, and then to have this think tank so that you can see what this looks like in action without just all the noise. And I'm doing that in the Amplify Your Authority. It's a Facebook group. Now those of you who are anti-Facebook, you comment the word lounge, and then there's another way to still be a part of that community without just being in the Facebook group, and I'll share more details about that later. So if you want just what we talked about today, you comment the word disrupt. And if you want to know more about the strategic pivot that I'm making with the Affluent Leader Intensive, and you want to know more about the Affluent Amplify Your Authority Facebook group, comment the word lounge. And again, if you're an anti-Facebook group but you're still want to learn more, comment the word lounge. All right, so that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for listening and learning with me, and I will see you next time as we continue to redefine what it means to be an elite, affluent leader. And as you go forward today and conquer, remember to stay bold, stay strategic, and then always execute brilliantly and stay on your edge. Until next time, bye.